Good evening, or well, you're watching this at whatever time it is convenient for you. So, good whatever time you are experiencing. How are you? Okay, so for me it's 2:09 a.m. on March 8th. My time zone is GMT +1. And I just thought to talk about some things before I eventually fall asleep around that kind of 6 a.m., 7 a.m. time. 6, 7. Okay, so some stories that I've written down, or rather some headlines I've written down between just yesterday and today. So apparently Timothy Chalamet went to do something that is, in my opinion, just wicked. He implied that participating in the industries of ballet and opera is basically doing nothing more than keeping them alive, kind of like a pointless effort at the end of the day, which is just pure wickedness. All right? Now, we can say he didn't mean it that way, but let's call it spade a spade. It's wickedness. Even if he didn't mean it to be wicked, the action itself speaks to a larger issue, especially considering he himself is an artist. Random, but SD kid, why? Who forced you people to do that rubbish? Oh God, like of all things he could have used to promote Marty Supreme, which is a film about table tennis, is a collaboration with SD Kid, a British rapper as far as I'm concerned. Wow, that is odd to say the least, but okay. What happened was, during an interview, I haven't watched the whole interview, neither do I have plans on watching it, but the clip that's been trending is him saying that basically the ballet and opera industries are just keeping themselves alive for no reason. I'm paraphrasing heavily, all right? So if that's not what he said, forgive me. But I'm just trying my best to remember the tone that I got from the clips that I saw online. And yes, having spent, conscionable time or actionable time in the right-wing hemisphere of the internet, I know how unfair it can be to take clips out of broader speeches and interviews and make them into something else. But by my understanding, this clip was pretty much self-containing, especially considering the reactions from people that even presented themselves as his own advocates. So it's wickedness, all right? It's akin to what Chris Brown did with Bad Bunny earlier this year. That's wickedness, because now, with Chris Brown, there's always there have been a lot of stories about physical abuse, mental abuse, stalking, and all of that. Well, if to the person who isn't involved directly in those situations, you could say, okay, it's alleged. You could make the argument that it's alleged, even though there's restraining orders against him, apparently. But the one that we can see with our two eyes that, yes, he did this, is undermine the efforts of another artist in a public forum, Chris Brown. And that speaks directly to the art industry. So it's not like he undermine the efforts of a democratic politician or a progressive politician. No, we can say, okay, that's his politics. He has his art. This one is doing something within the artistic hemisphere. So that kind of action is what Timothy Chalamet has unfortunately found himself going through. Okay, so naturally, people are saying that this is going to hurt his chances at winning an Oscar. The Oscar voting closed literally the day before this interview. It closed literally the day before this interview. So they've already voted. That said, I still think that if the controversy is so high that they can't look at you and say, oh, we're still going to give you an Oscar regardless. So this type of controversy is just in the class of, oh well, we'll do better next time. Because if I'm to deduce my one or two, he's most likely winning. So this isn't, a controversy on the line of the N-word, but even the N-word at this point, this is 2026, mask off season. He could have said the N-word and he would have still won that Oscar. That's just the truth. Yeah, so that's wickedness. I have a feeling that he didn't mean it that way. I haven't seen any public comments or apologies or something like that. So people are now, making inference to or making references to the fact that he's dating one of the Kardashians, that, he's always been a douchebag, essentially. To that I say, we can't decipher why he's dating a Kardashian. I mean, for goodness sakes, that we can tell is just possibly an unlikely love story. All right, but coming out this way as an artist yourself to punch down the efforts of other artists is wickedness. Let's just call it what it is. Again, I get that he might not have done it with the cruelest intent, but call the action what it is. It speaks to a wicked aura. Who do I even think is winning that Oscar? Most likely it's him, let's be real. I think the screen actors, there isn't a rule to this thing. These things. Demi Moore won the screen actors but ended up losing the Oscar. So there isn't a rule. You don't know how the votes are going to be split and all of that. Some anonymous ballots have come out, which, people are getting their, panties in a bunch now, because Michael B. Jordan was the actor mentioned the most. Oh well, we've come to learn that all those anonymous ballots don't really mean anything. Polymarket currently has Michael B. Jordan at the highest chance of winning the Best Actor Oscar, but if I were to make my deductions, I would say it's still Timothée Chalamet. So one thing that I wanted to speak on regarding this Timothée Chalamet and Michael B. Jordan and Sinner's dynamic is, before you go out and start saying things that like Sinner is an overrated movie, check your racism folder and make sure everything is deleted. Sometimes when we're doing file cleaning, we'll delete the heavy pictures, the heavy videos, but there's always one document lingering there. Check that the folder is completely empty before you come out and say, oh, Sinners is an overrated film. Again, I've been in the right-wing hemisphere of the internet, so I know or have a more first-hand and dynamic understanding of implicit bias and how it works. 3 years ago, naturally, I would have been in the Sinners is overrated crowd. But those opinions, at most of the time, are largely influenced by two classes of people, or multiple classes of people, two of which I will highlight. The unintentional racist and the intentional racist. So the intentional racist are the likes of your conservative bigots, okay? The believers in the superior race, in the superiority of the Aryan race. So anything a black person does is naturally inferior. They will naturally always favor a performance by a white person, which Timothée Chalamet happens to be. Then you have the unintentional racist. Now, the unintentional racist, how would I describe this person? The unintentional racist is the person that can't really put their finger on why they can't see the beauty behind anything in Sinners, especially Michael B. Jordan's performance. The unintentional racists will write off Michael B. Jordan's performance as weak, lacking the understanding that beauty comes in different forms. He is nominated for a reason. It's not a courtesy nomination. It's not a follow-come nomination. No, he specifically is nominated for a reason. And I imagine that in the voting bodies of these awards, there are unintentional racists. Now, the truth is, when it comes to the arts, there hardly is ever good or bad. There is lack of effort. There is miscommunication. We can criticize clear lack of effort. But in terms of good or bad, that's largely subjective, because even let's bring him in. Let's name names, right? A director that constantly gets flack for directing quote unquote bad movies, Tyler Perry. Even in Tyler Perry movies, he has audiences that would ride out for him beyond mutual support, just the fact that they like the kind of content he produces. So beauty comes in different forms, but the thing is, the unintentional racist holds the transformative, the creative, Eurocentric leaning standard as the standard to be emulated. I looked up earlier how many black actors have won the Academy Award for Best Performance by an Actor in a Leading Role. I don't know if I mentioned it in my last recording, but only 5 have won. They are Sidney Poitier in 1963. Then Denzel Washington was the second one in 2001. So between 1963 and 2001, there wasn't a single black lead actor winner. Then you have Forest Whitaker. Then there's someone in between, I really can't remember. And then there's Will Smith. Hold on, let me try and get the 5th person so that I can make my point clearly. I hope I can get service here. Black Best Actor winners. And Jamie Foxx. Okay, yeah, Jamie Foxx as Ray in 2004. So I haven't seen the Sidney Poitier film. I haven't seen Training Day. I have seen Ray. I've seen Last King of Scotland. And then there's Will Smith. So Will Smith's performance doesn't match the Eurocentric. Neither does Jamie Foxx's performance. But the thing with these performances is they are still within the mold of what is expected from the black community in the eyes of the unintentional racist. So take, for example, the Jamie Foxx performance, even though it's a performance that tells the life of a successful artist in the person of Ray Charles. Okay, it's no limit that they took light for. So even though it tells the glamorous life of Ray Charles, a lot of that performance is rooted in the struggle. Last King of Scotland is literally a performance telling you the life of a dictator. And of course, Will Smith is portraying a borderline abusive, I wouldn't say abusive, but the aggression is real in his performance. Okay? So I would say, from the ones that I've seen, I would say Will Smith is the furthest departure from the mold that they create, but still, it still falls within the mold in a way, in the sense that it was an up-and-coming story. It was, how did King Richard guide those girls within the struggle to get to the fame and notoriety that they would eventually have. So there's the mold, and I talked about this mold in some recordings ago how performances like the iconic Monique in Precious, even though being objectively an outstanding performance, fits the mold. How Viola Davis's Oscar-winning performance is an Oscar nominations because The Help fits the mold. Octavia Spencer fits the mold. Davine Joy Randolph fits the mold. You understand? And I didn't see the issue of the mold until I realized that we don't get stories about rich, affluent black people. Rarely. We rarely get those stories represented in the more artsy, quote unquote, respected awards. We always see those stories represented in maybe like the NAACP, the BETs, and awards catered to African American populations. So the unintentional racist doesn't value Michael B. Jordan's performance because it does not fit the mold. It's a black guy in a vampire movie. I literally had a conversation with someone and it was like, oh, the concept of black people doing vampire movies is so alien. Okay, now we're getting to the root issue of why Sinners existing in the way it does shakes things. Fair enough, even Sinners to a degree, his performance to a degree, speaks a bit to the mold because there are potent references to an up-and-coming story in this between the two characters Michael B. Jordan plays. Of course, there's potent references to the struggle, the very real struggle at the time of the African American in the United States. So in that sense, the mold is there, but in terms of the performance, right, the unintentional racist will not value, especially the later halves of the performer, or the later half, because you only have two halves, the later half of the performance where it's gone from struggling and up and coming African Americans, because he plays two characters distinctly, but it now moves to, okay, this is a horror movie now. You understand? So that unintentional bait and switch, I imagine, may not meet the sanity of the unintentional racist well. So that's why I said, before you come out and start saying things like Sinners is an overrated movie, check your racism folder well. If you are black, check your own, I don't know the word for when you are black, but support the demise of your own race. But check your coonery, I suppose, for a lack of a word. Check your, there's a word I'm trying to get. Check your inferiority complex folder well. Check it well. Make sure there's nothing there. And develop the mind to appreciate different performances as they are, and learn also to see the beauty from different dynamics. It's not all the time that it's only the crazy rich guy or the crazy white guy, the guy who's going to shout 10,000 times in the movie, that is necessarily the best performance. It's not the guy who's crying his eyes out that's necessarily the best performance. The arts, right? The point of the arts, the beauty in the arts is being able to see beauty in different things. And this, I feel, is the reason why, on average, best foreign language film, which is literally a category reserved for films not in the English language, is literally about to be won by a European film, most likely. Most likely it will be won by a European film, being sentimental value. A lot of the winners are European films, or films that have some sort of involvement with what the unintentional racist can comprehend. Take, for example, they can comprehend the struggle of the Latin Americans, and they equally have their mold that, okay, if it's a Latin American movie, it's going to have violence, it's going to have this, it's going to have that. Case in point, Emilia Perez. A good film, but of course, it fits the mold. Gangster, cocaine, mansion. Only thing unique really is we have a transgender gangster in the lead role, which, by the way, was phenomenally portrayed by Carla Sofia Gascon and what's the name, Zoe Saldana, doing the sidekick work. Then, we had Parasite winning Best Picture, which was an interesting choice, but ever since we haven't seen Korean representation, despite South Korea in particular having a reputation these days for producing high quality work in the public eye. Then, of course, Africa, especially, West Africa, Southern Africa, Sub-Saharan, quote-unquote Africa, it's all gone. There's hardly any representation. And not for the fact that I've seen art house Nigerian films and West African films, I would have been under the impression that all we do in West Africa is what we call in Nigeria Lekkiwood, which is basically, the lowest common denominator kind of films, the guy meets the girl kind of, the rom-coms, upscaled rom-coms, basically. Yeah. So we have, even within West Africa, both films that portray us as us and portray us within their molds. We have those films, but of course, somehow they're still not making it. And take this from someone who's, watched many Oscar films and knows what to expect from an Oscar-worthy film. A lot of our films are actually Oscar-worthy, both Nigeria and West Africa. So, yeah, it speaks to a lot of things, this unintentional racism. So my hope is the people who are just writing off Michael B. Jordan as a weak performance, you need to reassess. Now, as I've said, I've only seen 2 of the films in the Best Actor performance. I might change my stance on if I want MBJ to end up winning. Should I see the likes of The Secret Agent? I don't know if the other one is called Blue Moon, and is it Bugonia? Or I've seen One Battle After Another. No, I wouldn't pick Leonardo DiCaprio for that. I would give One Battle After Another something like directing, because it was well directed, but that Leonardo DiCaprio should win a second Oscar for that film, I don't think so. No, I don't think so. Not that the acting is bad, but I prefer Michael B. Jordan's performance to his. So, yeah, that's it. I won't blame you, because these things are like machine learning. We just grow up thinking, okay, they tell us this is a good performance and this is a bad performance. So when they tell us, okay, these are good performances by black people, and they're constantly showing black people, getting angry at each other in the poverty mold, in something, radical, in something that fits a vague idea that is rooted in racism too, if we're to be real, then we're going to grow up just holding those standards as sacrosanct, as, okay, this is the only thing that would make a black performance real. That's the word that they use, real. Wumi Musako, that's a performance that I would say kind of breaks the mold. Although, like I said, the first half of the film fits the mold. Yeah, that's, I feel, why I am rooting for the film everywhere, because it lures you in with the idea that, okay, yes, run-of-the-mill black struggle story, and then by the latter half you're getting a horror movie, but this time not with the faces you expect. Okay, so Another thing that I wanted to talk about that I wrote here is okay, Mehdi Hassan did an interview with one of our politics people. I don't know which of the politics people in particular he did with. I haven't observed the name. I'm just seeing the story right now, making the rounds on social media. It was an apparent embarrassment on his behalf. And by his behalf, I'm talking the person Mehdi Hassan was interviewing. Mehdi Hassan was mentioning things he explicitly said, the man he was talking to, and concerning, APC and Bola Ahmed Tinubu, who was our president. And the man was just there, denying it with his full chest, not knowing that he had evidence waiting for him. Wow. That is, what a way to really represent yourself, because I don't believe he represented the country. God forbid that he represented the country. What a way to represent yourself. Although it's possible he could genuinely have forgotten that he said all those things. It's possible. That happens. Like, there's some things you tell me, did I say that? So it's possible. I just wanted to talk about that. I also want to mention that, there was a retaliation, just a blip of good news by our military. They were able to take out some bandits up north. Yeah, so that is just a blip of good news and all of that. I've been seeing a lot of doomsday tweets about the struggles of coping with access to, or lack of access to, constant power supply and all of that. Terrible, terrible, terrible. Those tweets just mimic reality, and one thing I've observed is the tweets about no lights, no job, all those things, they've gone from being, I will find one day, to, I feel people are finally grasping the concept of, no. This is a bigger problem. This isn't something to just have radical optimism over. This is, there is actually a problem. So people are becoming conscious more and more. It's nice to see. Slowly but surely it is happening. Maybe not on the scale. We still have radical optimists in this country. They, of course, outnumber the realists and even pessimists in the country. But slowly but surely the conscious are arising. They're just solving the problems one by one. There's a page I follow, We Are GST. Everything they post, I mentioned to one of my friends, everything they post reads like a self-deletion letter. Like, they're just reading the news, but it just feels like they're reading from the pages of someone's self-deletion letter, because they'll present the realities of why we don't have constant power supply, why we have corrupt politicians, all in such immense detail that it's like, oh yeah, you're basically waiting for them to say, and that is why he jumped off. That page, interesting page, very interesting page. I like the way they produce their content, and I like that they haven't given up, because a lot of those pages, they trend for like 2 months and then we don't hear from them again. I like that they haven't given up. I like that they've maintained, I don't know if they're staff, I don't know if they're employed, but they've maintained their personnel, their visual personnel, their on-air personnel. Last thing here is, just before I picked up my phone to this recording, we're seeing very, very large-scale bombings in Tehran. Honestly, no casualty reports yet, but I imagine even if there isn't casualty, there will definitely be injuries. Oh, sheesh. We grew up learning, war is senseless, peace is priceless, let's give peace a chance. Thinking that, countries that start wars, it's only the likes of the countries that they painted out to be radical, like the Afghanistans, the Irans, the quote-unquote Middle East. But they were always in class make conscious effort to single out that country. The country, all right? Because I'm sure at some point YouTube is going to say, You can't even mention the country. Both good or bad, you can't even mention the country. So you know the country that they will single out, the one with the star. So we grew up learning that it's only those countries that start war because they are radicals and they are Muslims and all of that. Only for us to see that even almighty the United States can start things on their own for reasons best known to them. We can decipher, oh, it's because of the oil, oh, it's because of the this. Nah, we're just guessing. We really don't know why they're doing all these things. They're just out there telling themselves. Obviously, they'll give you the story of regime change, rescuing the people. Nah. Have they rescued their own people from those things? Have they, their own people within their nose, have they rescued them? Oh well, that's so tragic. Heart goes out to all the people that might be affected by this. At the end of the day, we're just watching egomaniacs ruin our lives. It's tragic. Again, this is 2:40 a.m. now, March 8th. Okay, so whenever I upload this, just have that in mind that was when this was recorded. So it might be possible that I'm uploading this at some point when, news that flips whatever I've said on its head can come out. And I'll call this the end of this recording. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you in another one if I get to make another one.
Literal 10 p.m. thoughts, but I thought I'd grab my phone and make this recording. If you are triggered by the success of your friends, you are not a communist or a progressive, really. If you believe in climbing the corporate ladder, you are not a communist, you are not a progressive. If you believe strictly in wealth distribution and that the problem is just redistributing wealth, you haven't attained the communist perspective that you think you have attained. When I was on the alt-right hemisphere of the internet, there was this thing that they would pride themselves in having, and I'm seeing the flip side of that now that my feed is inclined towards more leftist, progressive, communist content. They would pride themselves on having the bigger tent, saying that, the right wing accommodates even the quote-unquote classical liberals, the, of course, far right, the fascists, the conservatives. That's what they would pride themselves on, having the bigger tents, that they are more welcoming. And it just had me thinking, because now that my content is tailored towards more leftist perspectives, I'm seeing a lot of complaints about the left being too exclusionary and people making that out to be the reason why the Democrats losing elections. First of all, the Democrats losing elections is their inability to be leftist. So they are mirroring effectively the Republican Party, just with slower responses to right-wing calling points. So at first, when I was seeing the left is too exclusionary talking points, I was like, oh, well, maybe it's just the few radicals, or maybe it's just some people misunderstanding, maybe we're more welcoming, maybe, people could be more empathetic and be more open. But now that I think deeply about it, what exactly does the big tent serve? The thing about having too big a tent is you exposing yourself to possible contamination. So, for example, if you want to make a tent that even effective capitalists could join in. At some point, it'll spread, and then your tent is automatically rendered useless. Now, of course, tents in the sense don't mean anything because people have a spectrum of beliefs. There isn't hard line boundaries to either any of the perspectives, but I'm just saying, metaphorically, using tents as an analogy, who gets to be identified as part of the in-group. And the thing is, the exclusionary practice on the left may seem like fascism or may seem akin to the racist hierarchies that were perpetuated and in many ways still perpetuated in society. But for good cause? Because here's what I was thinking of that made me say, okay, let me grab my phone and put this to action. If you have a big tent, that means you have more people. And between capitalism and communism, obviously the capitalism will require more people to be run effectively. It thrives on having access to slave labor, having access to visible benchmarks for poverty, having reasons to be grateful you are not part of the less privileged. But communism works perfectly, especially when it's small scale, because everyone ought to know everybody within the communist society, within the communist niche within society. So I'm not surprised to see the right-wing people priding themselves as having the bigger tent, because ultimately the bigger tent serves them. The core right-wing people will remain at the top, with the leftists, the gay people, the trans people, who think that they can rise to the top, but ultimately cannot. The black people, the people that are not white men, that are straight and cisgender, they eventually become the servant class within the right-wing pyramid of hierarchy. But on the flip side, on the communist perspective, in the leftist perspective, when everybody has at least holds the core ideology, the core parts of the ideology sacrosanct, and has a deep understanding why there is no room for compromise on any of the core tenets of this ideology, then you have what could be an effective communist society. There are lots of people, ever since I've been getting more leftist content on my feeds, that I followed initially, but I ended up unfollowing because they weren't leftists, they were just Democrats. I can call names, but let me just say some things that I've observed that maybe you'll observe and will help you process your definitions and parameters as to whether you want to keep following this person or not. If a quote-unquote leftist content creator's sole form of content is attacking Republicans and attacking Democrats, or attacking Republicans specifically, if it is just that, right, and not that in conjunction with, they're probably even funded by Democrats. Now, if their perspective is defending Democrats, don't even bother. At this point, don't even bother. That's how, is it Hassan Piker that came out and said he was going to vote third party? I was diligent to observe the people who called him out. I was diligent to observe them. There's a guy, he's one of the more popular ones on this Democrat content creator space. I won't even call them leftist content creators, Democrat content creator space.
he did a whole like 30-minute takedown of Hassan, saying he's wicked, he's operating from a privileged position, that supporting, or rather not supporting the Democrats, supporting Republicans, which in fall turn, leads to ICE and all of that. But still, Hassan was right in calling a spade a spade. When the chips are down and you have the option to vote, obviously you're not going to vote for a Republican. But that you can't even entertain the discussion of a third party is, especially the fact that this is 2026. America's next presidential election is in late 2028, if America still exists by that time, if we exist by that time. So that so early on, they are quick to attack the idea of so much as even brushing up a third party candidate. Because the thing is, even if you want to say the Democratic candidate himself or herself or themselves is intentionally a leftist, they are surrounded by people who are not. The votes that they'll need to effect change are still centrists, if not right-wing people. None of them are leftists, that we can tell. So, when a content creator, their work is just, okay, defend the Democrats, they're not what you're looking for. When their work is constantly around my side, their side, they're not what you're looking for. Now, here are some clues as to what you could be looking for. When their work is constantly revolving around the philosophy behind why some certain things that the right wing does is bad, or certain things that the left believes in is good, when they constantly explain the why, they are probably what you're looking for. When they aren't losing sleep over their presentation values, because let's be real, many true leftists do not care about presentation, all right, even in the face of capitalism and how necessary it is to maintain a consistent presentation format to gain traction in the social media content hemisphere of the world. Many leftists do not care. Many leftists, you'll find, don't care what even they wear in their content. They rarely wear makeup. The kinds of stories that they put up, I'm saying stories, highlights from their lives that they put up are, pedestrian things, and you won't see a leftist posting about a vacation. It's rare. Like an actual leftist and not a Democrat. They can't post about a vacation. They might go on a vacation, but they have the conscience and the know-how to know that this doesn't serve anything. This doesn't warrant a public post. They won't post, unnecessary purchases that they make. They won't post things like fancy dinners and all of that. So check the person that you're following. I have so many names that I had to unfollow. You just need to keep a discerning eye when it comes to the content that you watch. Really screen what this person is saying. Is this person getting me to hate Trump only? Or is this person getting me to hate Trump and understand leftist principles? It has to be the two. It has to be the two. Now, another big one is most leftists aren't religious. Let's call a spade a spade. Let us call a spade, because the average leftist can see right through religion and what it is. But even the ones that are religious, their approach to religion isn't in the apologist perspective, doesn't come from the apologist perspective. They will tell you, they will call out the trash in their religious text. They will call out the contradictions. So if you are in the space, or if you're following someone who calls out the contradictions within the religion that they ascribe to, or claim that they ascribe to or subscribe to, then you are in a safer space than someone who's just blindly following the dictates of a religion despite claiming to be a leftist. Again, I think, like I said in one of my previous recordings, it doesn't pay to be a leftist. Why? It doesn't pay to say the sun shines in the morning. It doesn't pay to say the earth spins around its axis. It doesn't pay to say we have 24 hours in a day. It doesn't. It pays to say things like we are being racially eradicated. It pays to say things like trans rights ought to be eradicated from society. Edgy things, quote unquote. Although the thing is, things that are considered edgy today will be considered mundane tomorrow, and then leftism becomes on brand again, and then we're just going through this brouhaha. So you as a leftist, even if leftist becomes on brand again, don't fall into the temptation of contrarianism, of being a contrarian. All right, so those are just some 10 a.m. or 10 p.m. thoughts. I wanted to sleep, but I ate something bad. My stomach hurts so bad right now. Not bad, but I predict some unfriendly experiences with Delu. So, yeah, thanks for listening. And yeah, like I said, just really screen what you're watching or who you're listening to. Not everyone claiming to be a leftist is an actual leftist. Some people are just haters of the Republican Party. All right. So, just to append to these 10 p.m. thoughts that I'm having now, I had a conversation with someone recently that I don't know if he's waking up or he's just going through poverty right now. But he was basically asking me, what system do I prefer between capitalism and socialism? And I told them that it really depends on who you're asking and what the people in the system agree on, which is what democracy was. In fact, I can't tell you what democracy was invented for, but one of the reasons we hold on to it is because we feel like the people are represented. And to a degree, I mean, the people are represented, but that doesn't mean the people can't be duped. We are constantly being duped, all right? What does it take for a bastard to come and present himself as a saint, and then we end up voting for who we think is a saint, only for him to pull his dick out and piss on our faces? So I told him it depends on the people involved. If the people involved, I use the word I prefer hierarchy, but I also try to paint it this way, that if the people involved like to be respected in society, let's just say it that way so that it doesn't sound demonic or pejorative. If the people in the society like the idea of being an envy in some degree, capitalism works for them, because capitalism is rooted in hierarchy. Then, if the people in the society do not have issues doing things with other people, do not care about status, do not care about life to a degree, or I do not care about the furthering of the human race to a degree, most likely they are communists. And then it was a light back and forth spanning some days. And then I living in Nigeria, we're constantly inundated with kidnapping stories, banditry stories. And then I got curious and I asked him, okay, so under which system do you think kidnapping will be a thing? Then he said without a doubt, it will be capitalism. I'm like, oh, so look at the thing that you're perpetuating, because capitalism, especially when you take off the communist guardrails like democracy and the constitution, in capitalism, kidnapping is fair game, banditry is fair game. Anything to do to gain resource, to gain influence, to gain hierarchy, to gain rank, to gain money is fair in the true capitalist system. And when I'm saying capitalism, right, I know that there are dictionary definitions, there are textbook definitions of capitalism like Adam Smith and all of that. And then I'm not speaking about Adam Smith, I'm not speaking about Karl Marx or Engels. I am speaking about the sentiments from which these systems occur, the polar extremities of these sentiments. I laughed when the United CEO was shot in, I think, 2024, and then Candace Owens went on a podcast and said that this isn't real capitalism. I'm like, oh, really? Really? I don't know why capitalists have this idea that capitalism came with guardrails, both moral and actionable. I don't know why capitalists think that the idea of a minimum wage is a capitalist idea. It is not. Capitalists have paid $0 for labor, hard labor. Not that they could pay, they have paid. It's only after, I don't even know what caused minimum wage. Because people will say, oh, it's unions, it's strikes that cause it. I don't know what caused minimum wage, because capitalists have proven time and time again that their decisions aren't necessarily impacted by public opinion or workers' opinions. No. Something else had to trump that, if public or in secret. So the compromises capitalism makes aren't features of capitalism, but compromises, as I've said. So I laughed out loud when she was saying, oh, that this isn't how capitalism is meant to be. This isn't real capitalism. It is. In fact, it's even capitalism light. In real capitalism, that is mask off capitalism, no guardrails, no nothing. Banditry is what it comes to. Your money or your life, really. And sorry if you're hearing sounds you ought not to be hearing. The window is open, it has to be open. I'm not with a fan here. So, like I said in a previous recording, we wonder in this Nigeria who funds these bandits. Meanwhile, at least they come into the public eye every year, at least in the public eye, billions in contribution to these people are made by the public. So this is the real capitalism. The idea that they are doing it in the name of Islam is the branding, all right? Because capitalism goes hand in hand with the branding. That is just the branding. These people do not care about Islam. And if they do, they are using the people who genuinely think that this is a true calling of the prophet as useful idiots. The true masterminds behind these things do not care. That is a statement of suspicion on my end, I'll admit, but it doesn't make sense that you claim that you're doing this in the name of Islam and you are demanding, right, like the story of Abba specifically, they demanded 10 million. They raised the 10 million. Poor family that we know of anyway, but the family crowdsourced 10 million naira, right? They brought the 10 million naira. They were not like, oh, okay, no. We now need 3 bikes. They took the 10 million, mind you. They didn't say, okay, take this 10 million back, bring it back with the 3. They took it. They were not like, okay, now we want 3 bikes. That is capitalism. That is real capitalism. All these things that we're saying, raise the minimum wage, remove the tariffs, stop this, stop the war. It's a lie. It is sanitized capitalism. It is, in fact, pushing towards communism as far as I'm concerned. So when I see some broke trailer park conservative junkie coming to rant on whatever social media platform they can get their hands onto that will support autocorrect, saying that that socialism is the end of the world. Meanwhile, they live on food stamps. At least if a Nigerian says socialism is the end of the world, I will say, okay, yes, because you don't have any guardrails here. So when we say that, we know you mean what you say. Not somebody that's living on food stamps, waking up to tell you, socialism is the end of the world. Otondo. So, yeah, you can't complain about banditry and support capitalism in the same breath. Don't even pretend. If you want to say that you do not support banditry, then you are not a capitalist. It is as simple as that. It's just like what people do with Christianity. When the church started, it had its set of rules. All right? It wasn't open for all. It's only recent. It's a recent idea that Christianity is an open for all thing. That is a fairly recent idea. But when it started, it literally didn't start with the intention of it probably even seeing more than 100 years, as indicated by even Paul's writing. He was writing literally as somebody that thought the world was ending soon. So with time, it gained traction. It gained state legislation even. Then when it now became popular, obviously, not everybody could vibe with the strictness of the original church. So different Protestant angles came up. Anglicanism, evangelicalism, Lutheranism, Baptistism, I think, not baptism. But everyone hides under the umbrella of Christianity just to feel social cohesion. Whereas we scrutinize, why are your denominations, why not just actually subscribe to one thing? You're just latching on for social clout. So you can't be a capitalist and say that you have issues with banditry. It might sound like a hot take, but that is my analysis. You can't say that you support the free markets, right? Free markets, no guardrails, and gnash your teeth over somebody being a bandit or somebody injecting toxins into the air and selling you gas masks and oxygen tanks and all of that. So I just wanted to append that quick one to my 10 p.m. thoughts. Belly is still paining me, but oh well. Thank you for listening again.